The nurse failed her interview and rushed home until a SEAL commander called her call sign. "We don't hire ghosts, Miss Evans. We hire nurses." Dr. Holloway didn't look up from the file, his pen hovering like a scalpel over her resume. "It's not a ghost period," Samantha said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands hidden beneath the desk. "I was in private care, overseas, for 4 years, without a single verifiable reference." Holloway slammed the folder shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "You have the hands of a surgeon and the resume of a fugitive. We're done here. Don't let the door hit you." Samantha stood, her jaw tight. She checked the exits, noted the security camera's blind spot, and walked out. She had 2 hours to get home before her life imploded. The elevator ride down from the 42nd floor of the Sterling Medical Center felt like a descent into hell. The mirrored walls reflected a woman Samantha barely recognized. Pale skin, dark circles under amber eyes that used to be bright, and a cheap navy blazer that was slightly too tight across the shoulders. She wasn't Samantha Evans, pediatric nurse applicant. Not really, but she had to be. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of glass over the glowing notification. New message. "Landlord. Rent past due. Eviction notice filed tomorrow." Samantha closed her eyes, leaning her forehead against the cool metal of the elevator door. "Just one break," she whispered, the words tasting like ash. "I just needed one clean break." The doors slid open, revealing the polished marble lobby of the hospital. It was a palace of healing for those who could afford it. For Samantha, it was a fortress she had failed to breach. She stepped out, her worn flats silent on the floor. Her mind, trained in high-velocity environments, automatically catalogued the room. 2 security guards at the north entrance, armed, bored. 1 at the reception desk, distracted. 3 exits. 1 delivery bay. She shook her head, forcing the tactical overlay in her brain to dissolve. "Stop it! You are a civilian. You are a nurse. You are boring." She needed this job. The salary at Sterling was double what she made at the diner, and it came with insurance. Real insurance. The kind that would cover Leo's treatments without her having to barter with underground clinics in the meatpacking district. Leo, her 18-year-old brother, was the only thing that mattered. He was the reason she had scrubbed her identity, the reason she had buried the person she used to be in a grave of paperwork and lies. As she pushed through the revolving doors and into the gray, weeping afternoon of Seattle, the reality of the rejection settled in. Dr. Holloway hadn't just said no. He had been suspicious. "The hands of a surgeon," he had said. She looked at her hands. They were dry, the knuckles scarred from things that weren't scalpels. She shoved them into her pockets. The rain was coming down hard, blurring the city lights into streaks of neon and misery. She pulled her hood up and began the trek to the bus stop. She couldn't afford a cab. She barely had enough fare for the transit card. Her phone buzzed again. Not the landlord this time. Unknown number. She stared at it. The area code was from DC. A chill that had nothing to do with the rain skittered down her spine. She didn't answer unknown numbers. Ever. That was rule number 1 of staying dead. She let it ring until it went to voicemail, then immediately blocked the number. "Focus, Sam," she muttered, stepping into a puddle that soaked through her shoe. Plan B, the agency in Tacoma. Night shift. Hazardous pay. It was dangerous work, serving populations that asked no questions, but it paid cash. The problem was the exposure. Every time she worked off the books, she risked leaving a trace, and traces attracted predators. She reached the bus stop, huddling under the plexiglass shelter with a dozen other commuters. They all looked tired, worn down by the grind of the city. But Samantha's fatigue was different. It was the exhaustion of a sentry who hadn't slept in 3 years. She checked her watch. 4:15 p.m. Leo needed his injection at 5 p.m. If she missed the window, the tremors would start. By 6 p.m., he'd seize. The bus was late. Of course it was. She tapped her foot, a rhythmic, agitated beat. Across the street, a black sedan idled. The windows were tinted dark, illegal dark. It hadn't moved since she walked out of the hospital. Samantha's breath hitched. She forced herself not to stare directly at it. She used the reflection in the bus shelter's glass. No plates on the front. Ford Expedition. Heavy suspension. Government issue. Or high-end private security. Paranoia, she told herself. It's a rich neighborhood. It's probably a diplomat or a CEO. But the car didn't feel like a CEO's ride. It felt like a shark in a koi pond. The bus finally hissed to a halt in front of her, blocking her view of the sedan. She scrambled on, swiping her card with shaking fingers. As she moved to the back, she risked a glance out the rear window. The sedan pulled out into traffic. It didn't turn. It fell in 3 cars behind the bus. Samantha's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. They found me. The bus ride was an exercise in controlled terror. Samantha sat in the back, near the emergency exit. She wasn't just watching the sedan anymore. She was watching everyone. The man in the gray hoodie reading a newspaper, too still. The woman with the oversized purse, keeping her hand inside it. She was spiraling. She knew the symptoms. Hypervigilance, catastrophic thinking. The PTSD therapist she couldn't afford would have a field day. But in her world, the world she tried to leave behind, paranoia kept you breathing. She had to lose the tail. If she led them to the apartment, to Leo, it was over. 3 stops before her neighborhood, Samantha stood up. She waited until the doors hissed open, then pretended to drop her bag. As the passengers shuffled around her, creating a bottleneck, she bolted out the rear door just as it was closing. She hit the wet pavement running. She didn't look back. She sprinted down an alleyway, vaulting over a pile of wet cardboard boxes, her flats slipping on the grease-slicked concrete. She turned left, then right, weaving through the labyrinth of the industrial district. She pulled her blazer off, turning it inside out to reveal the gray lining, and ditched her hood. Visual disruption. Basic evasion. She ducked into a crowded laundromat, grabbed a random basket of clothes from a table, and pretended to fold a stranger's sheets, watching the street through the steamy window. 2 minutes passed. Then 3. The black sedan cruised slowly past the laundromat. It didn't stop. It continued down the street, brake lights flaring red in the gloom. Samantha let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for an hour. She dropped the sheet and practically ran out the back exit. She was 20 minutes late for Leo's medication. The run to their apartment complex, a crumbling brick building in a neighborhood gentrification forgot, took 10 minutes. Her lungs burned. Her legs, once capable of rucking 50 pounds for 20 miles, screamed in protest. The civilian life had softened her physically, even if her mind remained jagged. She burst through the front door of the building, bypassing the broken elevator and taking the stairs 2 at a time to the 4th floor. She fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them twice. "Come on, come on," she hissed. Finally, the lock turned. She shoved the door open and slammed it shut, throwing the deadbolt, the chain, and the custom floor latch she'd installed herself. "Leo?" she called out, breathless. The apartment was dark. The smell of old soup and damp plaster hung in the air. The only light came from the flickering television in the living room. "Leo." "In here, Sam." A weak voice drifted from the bedroom. Samantha dropped her bag and sprinted to the room. Leo was sitting on the edge of his bed, swaying slightly. His skin was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. His hands were gripping the mattress, knuckles white. "I'm sorry," Samantha gasped, grabbing the medical kit from under the floorboard she had loosened. "The bus, the interview. I'm so sorry." "It's okay," Leo mumbled, his eyes unfocused. "I'm okay. Just dizzy." Samantha worked with efficient, terrifying speed. She tore open an alcohol wipe, prepped the syringe, found the vein in his arm that wasn't scarred, and injected the stabilizer. She held her breath as she pushed the plunger. 1, 2, 3 seconds. Leo let out a long sigh as the tension left his frame. His shoulders dropped. The tremors in his hands ceased. "Better?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Yeah." Leo whispered. He looked up at her, his eyes clear now. You didn't get the job. It wasn't a question. He knew her too well. Samantha sat on the floor, leaning back against the dresser. She felt hollowed out. No. I didn't get it. We have rent on Tuesday, Leo said quietly. I know. I can stop the meds, Sam. Maybe cut the dose in half. Don't you ever say that, she snapped, the ferocity in her voice startling them both. She softened immediately, reaching out to squeeze his hand. Never. I'll figure it out. I always do. Leo looked at her, a profound sadness in his young face. You shouldn't have to. You shouldn't be here, Sam. You're a lion, living in a cage. I'm a nurse, she lied. I'm just a nurse. Leo didn't answer. He laid back on the pillow, the exhaustion of the episode taking him under. Samantha stayed until his breathing evened out into sleep. She walked into the small kitchen and poured herself a glass of tap water. Her hands were still trembling, not from exertion, but from the adrenaline crash. She had lost the tail. She was safe. Leo was safe. She walked to the window, peering through the gap in the blinds. The street below was empty, just rain and streetlights. She turned back to the kitchen counter to grab an apple her dinner when a sound stopped her heart. Click. It was the distinct, mechanical sound of a lock tumbling, but not the front door. It came from the fire escape window in the living room. Samantha didn't scream. She didn't freeze. She moved. She grabbed the longest knife from the drying rack, a cheap serrated bread knife, and pressed her back against the refrigerator, sliding into the shadows. The window slid up. The rain noise got louder. A boot stepped onto the floor. Heavy. Tactical. Samantha held her breath. She calculated the distance. 10 feet. If he had a gun, she was dead. If he didn't, she had a chance. She needed to keep him away from the bedroom, away from Leo. The figure stepped fully into the room, tall, broad shoulders blocking out the street lamp light. He didn't turn on a flashlight. He moved with a silence that was unnatural for a man of his size. He wasn't a burglar. Burglars were noisy. This was a hunter. Samantha tightened her grip on the knife. She waited for him to pass the kitchen threshold. When his shadow crossed the linoleum, she lunged. It was a kill strike. Or it would have been. Against anyone else. Samantha aimed for the subclavian artery, a disabling blow meant to drop him instantly. But before the blade could connect, a hand clamped around her wrist with the force of a hydraulic press. She didn't panic. She used her momentum, twisting her body to drive a knee into his midsection. He anticipated it, turning his hip to absorb the blow, barely grunting. He spun her, twisting her arm behind her back. The knife clattered to the floor. He slammed her chest first against the refrigerator, pinning her there. Yield. A deep voice rumbled in her ear. Samantha didn't yield. She stomped on his instep, threw her head back into his face. He swore, stumbling back a half step. It was enough. She spun around, grabbing a heavy cast-iron skillet from the stove. She swung it with both hands, a desperate feral arc. He caught the pan. He actually caught the swinging cast iron with one hand, his palm flat against the bottom, absorbing the shock. Damn it, Evans. Stand down. The voice. Samantha froze. The skillet hung in the air between them. The lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room for a split second. She saw the face. Square jaw, scar running through the left eyebrow, eyes the color of steel and ice. He was older than the last time she'd seen him. There was gray in the beard, lines of exhaustion etched around the eyes. He was wearing a soaking wet charcoal suit, not camis, but he wore it like armor. Joshua, Commander Joshua Thorne, SEAL team leader, the man who had trained her, the man who had saved her life, the man she had left bleeding in a dusty alley in Aleppo 3 years ago. Samantha dropped the skillet. It hit the floor with a deafening clang. You, she breathed. Joshua straightened his tie, wincing slightly as he touched his nose where she'd headbutted him. Nice to see your reflex time hasn't degraded, though your perimeter security is garbage. That window latch was rusted through. What are you doing here? Samantha hissed, glancing frantically toward the bedroom door. "Get out, if you wake him. The boy is sedated," Joshua said calmly. "I saw the injection timestamps on the pharmacy records." Samantha felt the blood drain from her face. "You hacked my medical records?" "I hacked everything, Samantha. Your bank accounts, your landlord's eviction notice, your rejected application at Sterling Medical today." He stepped closer, filling the small kitchen with his presence. He smelled of rain, expensive tobacco, and gun oil. "Dr. Holloway is a prick, by the way, but he did me a favor. You." Realization dawned on her, cold and sharp. "You flagged me. That's why I didn't get the job. The gap in my resume. You made sure they dug into it." Joshua didn't deny it. He walked to the counter, picked up the apple she had been about to eat, and inspected it. "You're a ghost, Sam. Ghosts don't get 401ks. Ghosts don't play nurse in high-end hospitals." "I am a nurse," she yelled, forgetting to whisper. She stepped forward, poking a finger into his chest. It was like poking a concrete wall. "I am a civilian. I have a brother who needs me." "I walked away, Joshua. I honored the NDA. I disappeared." "You ran," Joshua corrected, his voice dropping an octave. "You ran because you thought you were compromised, because you thought you killed that asset in Damascus." "I did kill him." "No, you didn't." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. The refrigerator hummed. "What?" Samantha whispered. "He survived. He talked. And now, the people he talked to are looking for the medic who almost ended him." Joshua tossed the apple back into the bowl. "That black SUV you spotted today? That wasn't me. That was the Vanguard group. Mercenaries. Cleaners." Samantha felt her knees go weak. She grabbed the counter for support. "Vanguard. Here." "They tracked the prescription refills for Leo," Joshua said. "Sloppy, Sam. Using a fake name but the same unique compound for his condition. It was only a matter of time." "I had to," she choked out. "He was dying. And now you're both dead if you stay here." Joshua checked his watch. "My team is 3 minutes out. We have a secure extraction vehicle." "I'm not going with you," she said, shaking her head. "I know how this works. You extract me. You debrief me. You lock me in a hole until the heat dies down. I can't do that to Leo." Joshua looked at her. For the first time, the steel in his eyes melted, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. "I'm not here to lock you up, Sam. I'm here because I need you." "For what?" "You have 1,000 medics. You have the best surgeons in the Navy. Not for a surgery." Joshua reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a photo. He slid it across the counter. It was a picture of a girl, maybe 7 years old. She was sitting in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines that looked terrifyingly familiar to Samantha. "Who is she?" Samantha asked. "My daughter," Joshua said. The vulnerability in his voice terrified her more than the knife fight. "And she has what Leo has. The exact same degenerative neuro syndrome." Samantha stared at him. "That's impossible. It's genetic, rare." "I know," Joshua said. "But someone engineered a rapid onset version. Someone weaponized it. And they used it on my little girl to get to me." He stepped closer, invading her space, his intense gaze locking onto hers. "I don't need Samantha Evans, the pediatric nurse applicant," he said, his voice rough. "I don't need a civilian. I need the woman who kept a squad alive for 3 days in the Hindu Kush with a roll of duct tape and a stolen med bag." He leaned down, his lips inches from her ear. "I need Whisper." The call sign hit her like a physical blow. It was the name she had earned in the blood and dust, the name of the woman who could move silently, kill efficiently, and heal the impossible. "She doesn't exist anymore," Samantha whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "She has to," Joshua said grimly, "because Vanguard is coming up the stairs. I heard the front door breach 30 seconds ago. As if on cue, the sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway outside the apartment. Joshua drew a suppressed Sig Sauer from his waistband and held it out to her, handle first. "Your choice, Whisper. Die a nurse, or live a legend. Samantha looked at the gun, then at the bedroom door where Leo slept, then at Joshua's outstretched hand. Her breathing shifted. The panic evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline focus. Her posture changed. Her shoulders squared, her chin lifted. The nurse vanished. She took the gun. "Check the bedroom," she commanded, her voice void of emotion. "I'll take the fatal funnel at the door." Joshua grinned, a dark, terrifying expression. "Welcome back." The hallway of the tenement building smelled of boiled cabbage and ozone. The ozone was new, the scent of static electricity discharged from a flashbang that hadn't detonated yet but was primed. "Samantha Evans, no." Whisper moved to the doorframe. She didn't look like a nurse anymore. The tension in her shoulders was gone, replaced by a fluid, lethal readiness. She checked the chamber of the Sig Sauer. One in the pipe. Magazine full. "I have the package," Joshua murmured behind her. He had scooped Leo up effortlessly, draping the unconscious boy over his left shoulder like a rucksack, leaving his right hand free to hold his own sidearm. "On you." Samantha nodded once. She didn't speak. In the field, silence was survival. She reached for the doorknob, counting down in her head. 3, 2, 1. She ripped the door open and surged into the hallway, leading with the gun. 2 figures in black tactical gear were moving up the stairs, weapons raised. They wore balaclavas and no insignia. Vanguard, corporate mercenaries who killed for a paycheck. "Contact front," Samantha said, her voice flat. She didn't hesitate. She fired twice. The suppressed thwip-thwip sounds were swallowed by the thunder outside. The lead mercenary crumpled, taking a round to the thigh and one to the chest plate. He went down, gasping, his armor absorbing the kill shot, but the kinetic energy knocking the wind out of him. The second merc opened fire. Bullets chewed into the plaster around the doorframe. Samantha dropped to a knee, making herself a smaller target, and returned fire. Her aim was terrifyingly precise. She put a round through the man's shoulder, spinning him around, then another into his radio headset. "Move," she commanded. Joshua was already moving. He stepped over the groaning mercenary, his boots heavy on the floorboards. "Stairs are burned. They'll have a containment team in the lobby. Fire escape is covered," Samantha said, scanning the stairwell. "Roof. Roof it is." They sprinted up the final flight of stairs. Samantha's legs burned, but the pain was distant, information to be filed away for later. Right now, only the objective mattered. Protect the package. They burst onto the roof into a deluge. The rain was torrential, hammering against the tar paper and rusting vents. The city of Seattle was a smear of gray and light below them. "Extraction point is 3 blocks east," Joshua shouted over the wind. "Parking garage, level 4, blue van, 3 blocks. Samantha wiped rain from her eyes. "We have to jump the gap." The gap between their building and the next was 8 feet. Doable on a dry day in running shoes. Dangerous in a storm. Suicidal carrying a 140-pound teenager. "Go," Joshua ordered. "I'll make it. If you miss, you both die." "I don't miss." Samantha holstered her weapon and sprinted for the edge. She hit the low parapet and launched herself into the void. For a second, she was weightless, suspended in the rain and the dark. Then she slammed into the gravel roof of the adjacent building, tucking into a roll to disperse the impact. She came up in a crouch, gun drawn, scanning for threats. "Clear," she yelled. Joshua backed up, taking a running start. He looked like a juggernaut, a dark blur of power. He hit the edge and leaped. It wasn't graceful, but it was effective. He landed heavy, his boots skidding on the wet tar. He stumbled forward, one knee hitting the gravel, but he kept his grip on Leo. Samantha was there instantly, grabbing his harness and hauling him upright. "Got you. Let's move," Joshua grunted. "They'll have drones up in 2 minutes." They crossed 3 rooftops, a shadowy parkour through the storm. Below them, sirens wailed, converging on Samantha's apartment building. The Vanguard team wasn't worried about the police. They likely had the precinct on a payroll or a diversion in place. They reached the parking garage. The blue van, a rusted plumbing service vehicle, sat in the shadows of the 4th floor. Joshua slid the side door open and gently laid Leo on a stretcher bolted to the floor. He checked the boy's pulse. "He's stable, stronger than he looks." "He's had to be," Samantha said, climbing into the driver's seat. She didn't ask for the keys. She hot-wired the ignition with a practiced twist of the steering column wires, realizing halfway through the keys were in the visor. Old habits. She started the engine. "Where are we going?" "Safe harbor," Joshua said, climbing into the passenger seat and pulling a tablet from a hidden compartment. "Drive. I'll navigate." "And Sam?" She looked at him, her hands gripping the wheel, the adrenaline finally starting to ebb, leaving her shaking. "Don't stop for red lights." The safe house was a decommissioned cargo ship dry-docked in a restricted zone of the port of Tacoma. It was a rusted hulk of iron called the Iron Maiden, a ghost ship in a graveyard of industry. Samantha drove the van up the ramp and into the cavernous cargo hold. The doors groaned shut behind them, sealing out the rain and the world. Inside, the ship had been retrofitted. It was a mobile command center. Banks of servers hummed in the dark, cooled by industrial fans. A triage unit was set up near the stern, gleaming with chrome and high-tech monitoring equipment that cost more than Samantha's entire building. Joshua carried Leo to a bed in the medical bay. Samantha immediately took over, hooking her brother up to the monitors, checking his pupils, listening to his heart. She moved with the efficiency of a machine, shutting out the surroundings until Leo's vitals were green across the board. Only then did she turn to Joshua. He was standing by a holographic table, stripping off his wet suit jacket. Underneath, he wore a black t-shirt that clung to the scars on his arms. He looked older, tired. "He's safe," Samantha said, her voice echoing in the metal hull. "Now tell me everything. And don't give me the need-to-know speech. I just shot 2 men. I need to know." Joshua nodded. He tapped the table. A hologram flickered to life, a spinning double helix of DNA, fractured and angry red. "Project Acheron," Joshua said. "It's not a disease, Sam. It's a biological kill switch." Samantha walked closer, studying the data. Her medical training warred with her tactical knowledge. This is synthetic. It attacks the myelin sheath, but at a rate that's impossible in nature. It looks like MS and ALS combined, accelerated by a viral vector. Joshua finished. It was designed for assassination, targeted genetic breakdown. You infect a target. They degrade over a month, die of natural causes. No bullet, no poison, no trace. "Leo," Samantha whispered. "Why Leo?" "Because of our father," a voice said from the shadows. Samantha spun around. Leo was sitting up in the bed, groggy but awake. He looked small in the white sheets. "Leo." She rushed to him. "Lay down. I heard you talking," Leo said, his voice raspy. "Dad wasn't just a mechanic, was he, Sam?" Samantha looked at Joshua. Joshua looked away. "Your father was a geneticist for a defense contractor," Joshua said softly. "He defected 15 years ago. He stole the research for Acheron to prevent it from being used. He thought he destroyed it, but he kept a backup. Hidden." "Where?" Samantha asked. "Inside Leo's DNA," Joshua said. The silence in the cargo hold was absolute. "What?" Samantha breathed. "He encoded the antidote key into the non-coding regions of Leo's genome," Joshua explained, "to keep it safe. But the encoding, it mutated. It triggered the very thing it was meant to cure. Leo isn't just sick, Sam. He's the map, and Vanguard wants him so they can perfect the weapon." Samantha felt sick. "So my brother is a walking encrypted hard drive, and the only source of the cure," Joshua added. He gestured to a curtained section of the medical bay. For her, he walked over and pulled back the curtain. A young girl lay in a glass-walled isolation unit. She was pale, her blonde hair spread like a halo on the pillow. She was intubated, machines breathing for her. "Lily," Joshua said, his voice cracking. "My daughter. They tested the weapon on her to force me to find the key. To find you. Samantha stared at the girl. She saw the same tremors, the same pallor she had seen in Leo for years. How long does she have? Samantha asked. Days. Maybe hours. Joshua turned to her. I didn't call you because you're a good shot, Whisper. I called you because you're the only medic who ever improvised a craniotomy in a sandstorm. I need you to extract the key from Leo's blood, synthesize the antidote, and save them both. I need a lab, Samantha said, her mind racing. I need a sequencer, a centrifuge, reagents. We have all of that, Joshua said. But we're missing the catalyst, the viral protein they use to bond the sequence. Without it, I can't unlock the key in Leo's blood. Where is it? There's only one place holding a sample of the active strain, Joshua said. He brought up a map on the hologram. It was a blueprint of a skyscraper. Samantha's blood ran cold. She recognized the building immediately. The 42nd floor. The polished marble. Sterling Medical Center, she said. Sterling isn't just a hospital, Joshua said, zooming in on the schematic. The top 5 floors are leased to a shell company called Chimera Biopharma, a Vanguard subsidiary. Dr. Holloway, Samantha realized. He wasn't interviewing me for a job. He was scanning me, he suspected. Joshua agreed. He saw the fake background, the skills that didn't match the resume. If you had stayed 5 minutes longer, security would have detained you. Samantha paced the metal floor. So the catalyst is in the Chimera labs. Level 45? Level 47. The penthouse. Secure storage. Biometric locks. Thermal sensors. Armed patrols. A fortress, Samantha said. We can't breach it with force, Joshua said. If we trip an alarm, the failsafe incinerates the samples. We lose the cure forever. So we have to walk in, Samantha said. She looked down at her cheap, water-stained blazer. I don't think they'll let me back in for a second interview. Not as a nurse, Joshua said. He walked to a crate and popped the lid. Inside was a sleek, black evening gown and a tuxedo. Tonight is the Sterling Foundation Gala, a charity event for the city's elite, senators, tech moguls, and the board of Chimera. Samantha touched the fabric of the dress. It was silk, heavy, expensive. We go in as donors? We go in as sharks, Joshua corrected. I've forged invites. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, tech investors from Silicon Valley. We walk the floor, we schmooze, and while I distract Holloway and the security chief, you slip into the private elevator. Me? You know the medical protocols. You know how to handle the sample without killing it. I'm the distraction. You're the thief. Samantha looked at the dress, then at the gun on the table. I need equipment, bypass tools, a drive to copy the data. It's all in the clutch purse, Joshua said with a ghost of a smile. Old school spycraft. Samantha looked at Leo, sleeping peacefully despite the revelation that his own body was a battlefield. She looked at Lily, innocent and dying. She thought of the years of hiding, the years of eating cold beans and dodging landlords. The fear was gone. It was replaced by a cold, burning anger. Okay, Samantha said. She picked up the dress. But one condition. Name it. Holloway is mine. Joshua's grin was sharp, dangerous. Deal. The Sterling Gala was a sea of diamonds, champagne, and fake smiles. A string quartet played Mozart in the corner of the ballroom, the music floating over the murmur of 500 wealthy guests. Samantha walked in on Joshua's arm. She was unrecognizable. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, revealing the long line of her neck. The black dress fit like a second skin, hiding the ceramic knife strapped to her thigh and the climbing wire coiled in the hem. Her makeup was flawless, highlighting the amber eyes that scanned the room with predatory precision. Sector. A clear, she murmured, barely moving her lips. Camera dead spots are consistent with the schematics, Joshua replied, smiling and waving at a passing waiter. He looked devastating in the tuxedo, the rugged soldier playing the part of the eccentric billionaire perfectly. There he is, Samantha said. Dr. Halloway was holding court near the ice sculpture, laughing with a group of men in gray suits. He looked smug, untouchable. "He's wearing a level 4 keycard," Joshua noted, clipped to his belt. "I see it." "I'll draw him out," Joshua said. "You ready to go, Ghost?" "I was born a ghost," Samantha whispered. Joshua kissed her on the cheek, a gesture that sent a jolt of electricity through her that had nothing to do with the mission, and strode toward Halloway. "Dr. Halloway," Joshua boomed, his voice carrying over the music. "Just the man I wanted to see. I have a bone to pick with you about your oncology funding." Halloway turned, confused, then annoyed. As Joshua engaged him, blocking his view and the view of his security detail, Samantha slipped sideways. She moved through the crowd like smoke. A waiter turned, but she was already gone. A security guard blinked, but the space where she had been was empty. She reached the service corridor behind the kitchen. Empty. She slipped off her heels, carrying them. She ran silently down the hall to the private elevator bank. She pressed the panel. It required a keycard. "Damn," she whispered. She pulled a device from her clutch, a signal cloner. She needed to be within 3 feet of a keycard to clone it. She should have lifted Halloway's. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. A security guard stepped out. He was huge, his earwig buzzing. Samantha didn't have time to hide. The guard saw her. "Hey, this is a restricted." Samantha moved. She dropped the shoes, stepped into his space, and drove the heel of her hand into his chin, snapping his head back. Before he could fall, she spun him, choked him out with a sleeper hold, and dragged him into the janitor's closet. She grabbed his keycard. Beep. Access granted. Level 47. She stepped into the elevator and pressed the button. As the doors closed, she checked her reflection in the brass panel. The nurse was gone. Whisper was going to work. Level 47 was not a hospital floor. It was a tomb of glass and brushed steel, bathed in a low, sterile blue light. The air was pressurized, humming with the sound of HEPA filters scrubbing the atmosphere of anything living. Samantha stepped out of the elevator. She didn't hide. In a space this open, hiding was impossible. She walked with purpose, the cloned keycard sweating in her palm. Room 4709. Viral storage. She passed rows of glass cells. Inside weren't patients, but primates. Rhesus macaques connected to ventilators, their charts flashing red. Samantha forced herself not to look. She was a medic, but tonight, she couldn't save everyone. She had to save the 2 who mattered. She reached 4709. The door was heavy, reinforced with a blast shield. She swiped the card. Access denied. Biometric scan required. Samantha cursed silently. Joshua's intel had been good, but Halloway was paranoid. The keycard wasn't enough. It needed a retinal match. "Stuck, Miss Evans." The voice came from the speakers overhead. Smooth, cultured, cruel. Samantha didn't flinch. She turned slowly to face the camera in the corner of the ceiling. "Dr. Halloway," she said. "I assume the interview is officially over." "On the contrary," Halloway's voice purred. "It's just beginning. You didn't think I'd leave my life's work unguarded while I drank cheap champagne downstairs, did you? I knew who you were the moment you walked into my office this morning. The facial recognition software flagged you as a deceased asset. Whisper. The ghost of Damascus." "Open the door, Halloway," Samantha said, her hand drifting to the slit in her dress where the ceramic knife rested. "I don't think so. Security is on its way up. Vanguard doesn't take prisoners, but I might make an exception. I need a new test subject, someone with resilience." The elevator dinged behind her. Samantha didn't wait. She spun around, not toward the elevator, but toward the fire control panel on the wall. She shattered the glass with her elbow and pulled the manual override. Sirens wailed. The halon gas suppression system hissed, preparing to dump oxygen-starving gas into the corridor. "You're bluffing," Halloway shouted over the intercom. "You'll kill yourself." "I can hold my breath a long time," Samantha muttered. She ran to the nearest lab station, grabbed a canister of liquid nitrogen, and sprinted back to the blast door. She upended the canister over the biometric lock mechanism. The supercooled liquid hissed, freezing the metal instantly, turning the steel brittle. She drew her ceramic knife harder than steel and slammed the pommel into the frozen lock. It shattered like glass. The heavy door groaned. Samantha hauled it open and slipped inside, just as the elevator doors parted and the Vanguard tactical team poured into the corridor. She was inside the vault. In the center of the room, suspended in a magnetic field within a cylinder, was a single vial of iridescent blue liquid, the catalyst. She grabbed a containment breech bag from her clutch, bypassed the magnetic seal with the signal cloner, which luckily worked on the internal mechanism, and snatched the vial. Target acquired. She whispered into her earwig, "Joshua, I'm burning." There was no response, just static. "Joshua?" She looked at the security monitors on the wall of the vault. Down in the ballroom, chaos had erupted. The feed showed overturned tables, shattered ice sculptures, and Joshua Thorne fighting 4 men at once in the center of the dance floor. He was losing. Samantha stared at the screen. Joshua took a baton strike to the ribs, went down, rolled, and swept the legs of an attacker. He was fighting like a demon, but he was overwhelmed. He wasn't trying to win. He was buying her time. "No," Samantha hissed. She looked at the vial in her hand. The cure. The mission. If she went down there, she risked losing it. Protocol dictated she find an alternate exit and extract. Protect the package. But Whisper didn't leave men behind. She scanned the vault. There was a service vent in the ceiling. Too small. There was the main door, now blocked by a tactical team. And there was the window. Level 47. Floor-to-ceiling reinforced glass. Outside, the storm was raging, rain lashing against the pane. Samantha grabbed a heavy metal tank of oxygen from the corner. She dragged it to the window. She stripped off the heavy silk skirt of her gown, revealing the tactical leggings she'd worn underneath. She tied the climbing wire from her hem to the valve of the tank. She retreated to the back of the room, aimed her Sig Sauer, which she'd retrieved from the small of her back, and fired 3 rounds into the glass. It spiderwebbed, but didn't break. She hurled the oxygen tank through the weakened spot. The glass shattered outward. The wind roared into the room, a vacuum sucking papers and debris out into the night. Samantha clipped the wire to her belt and jumped. She plummeted 47 stories. The wire screamed as it unspooled from the motorized winch on her belt. She kicked off the side of the building, swinging in a wide arc, smashing through the window of the ballroom on the 2nd floor. She crashed onto the banquet table, scattering crystal glasses and terrified socialites. She rolled off the table, gun drawn, the vial safe in the padded pouch at her waist. The music had stopped. The guests were screaming, pressing against the walls. In the center of the room, Holloway was standing over Joshua. 2 guards held Joshua's arms. Holloway held a pistol to Joshua's head. "Drop it!" Holloway screamed when he saw her. "Drop the gun or I paint the floor with his brains!" Samantha froze. She was 20 feet away. A difficult shot with a handgun, impossible with a hostage shield. Joshua looked up. His face was bloodied, one eye swollen shut. He saw her. He didn't look relieved. He looked furious. "I told you to run," he rasped. "I don't take orders from ex-commanders," Samantha said, her gun leveled at Holloway's head. "Give me the vial," Holloway demanded, his hand shaking slightly. "And you both walk out." "You know I can't do that," Samantha said. "You'll kill us the second you have it. Then he dies." Holloway cocked the hammer. Time seemed to slow down. Samantha looked at Joshua. He gave her a microscopic nod, a signal. The flash. Samantha recalled the ozone smell from the apartment. Joshua always carried a flashbang. "Catch!" Samantha yelled, tossing the clutch purse, not the vial, into the air toward Holloway. Holloway's reflex kicked in. His eyes flicked to the flying object for a fraction of a second. In that second, Joshua dropped his dead weight, dragging the guards down, and kicked backward, snapping Holloway's knee. Holloway screamed and fired wildly into the ceiling. Samantha didn't miss. She fired once, The bullet struck Holloway in the shoulder, spinning him around. She sprinted forward, sliding across the polished floor, and kicked the gun from his hand. She stood over him, her heel on his chest, her gun pointed at his nose. "You rejected my application," she said coldly. You're a monster," Holloway wheezed. "I'm a nurse," Samantha said, "and I'm prescribing you a long stay in federal prison." "Clear!" Joshua roared, scrambling up. He grabbed Holloway by the collar, using him as a human shield as the rest of the security team hesitated. "Back off, or your boss gets it." The guards froze. They were mercenaries. They didn't die for free, and with their paymaster bleeding out, the fight drained out of them. "Go," Joshua said to Samantha. "The van is out back. We go together," she said, grabbing his arm. They backed out of the ballroom, dragging Holloway until they reached the service exit. Joshua knocked the doctor out with a swift blow to the temple and left him for the police, who were finally wailing in the distance. They burst into the rainy alley, dove into the van, and peeled out just as the black SUVs of the backup team turned the corner. The Iron Maiden was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of the cardiac monitors. It had been 4 hours since they returned, 4 hours of agonizing chemistry. Samantha had used the stolen catalyst to strip the protein coating from Leo's blood sample, revealing the hidden data. She had sequenced it, synthesized the antidote, and prayed. Now, she stood between the two beds. Leo lay on the left, Lily on the right. Both were pale, their breathing shallow. The toxin was in its final stage. "It's ready," Samantha said, holding 2 syringes filled with a clear, golden fluid. Her hands, which had been steady while she hung off a skyscraper, were trembling. "Do it," Joshua said. He was standing by his daughter, holding her small hand. He had stitched his own cuts, refusing painkillers. Samantha injected Leo first, then Lily. They waited. 10 minutes. 20. "Nothing's happening," Joshua whispered, the despair cracking his voice. "Sam, give it time," she said, though her own heart was breaking. "The metabolic uptake needs time." Suddenly, Leo gasped. His back arched off the mattress, his eyes flying open. "Leo!" Samantha grabbed his shoulders. He convulsed once, then collapsed back onto the pillows. He took a deep breath, a real breath. The rasp was gone. The tremors in his hands stopped. He looked at Samantha, his eyes clear for the first time in years. "Sam? I'm hungry." Samantha let out a sob, covering her mouth. "Daddy?" Joshua spun around. Lily was stirring. She pulled the oxygen mask off her face. The gray pallor of her skin was fading, replaced by a flush of pink. Joshua fell to his knees beside the bed, burying his face in her blanket. The big SEAL commander, the man who killed without hesitation, wept openly. Samantha watched them. She felt a profound exhaustion settle into her bones, but it was a good exhaustion. The kind that came after a long shift where you actually saved the patient. She walked out of the medical bay, up to the deck of the ship. The storm had passed. The dawn was breaking over the Tacoma harbor, painting the sky in soft purples and golds. She leaned against the railing, watching the sun rise. Footsteps approached behind her, heavy, familiar. Joshua stood next to her. He didn't speak for a long time. He just watched the horizon. "They're going to be okay," he said finally. "Yeah," Samantha said. "They are. Holloway is in custody," Joshua said. "The files we pulled from his server. It's enough to bury Chimera Biopharma for good. The government is already freezing their assets." "Good. There will be an inquiry," Joshua said. "About tonight. About the damage. I'm good at disappearing," Samantha said, though the words felt hollow now. "Don't," Joshua said. He turned to face her. "Don't run again." "I can't go back to being a nurse, Joshua. Not after tonight." Dr. Holloway was right about one thing. "I'm not cut out for patient intake forms." "No," Joshua agreed. He reached out, his hand brushing hers on the railing. "But the world has enough nurses. What it needs is whisper." Samantha looked at him. Whisper is a ghost. Then let's bring her back to life, Joshua said. I'm starting a new unit, off the books. We handle the things the red tape can't touch. We protect the Leos and the lilies of the world. He paused, his eyes searching hers. I need a second in command. Someone I can trust with my life. Someone who jumps out of skyscrapers for me. Samantha smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had worn in years. The pay, be better than the hospital, she said. Joshua grinned, pulling her close. Comprehensive dental, and you get to drive the van. He kissed her then. It wasn't desperate like the mission. It was slow, promising, and solid. It felt like coming home. Samantha Evans didn't get the job at Sterling Medical Center. She got something better. She got her brother back. She got a future. And she found out that sometimes the only way to save a life is to stop running and start fighting. The nurse was gone. The warrior was home. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes action and redemption, please like, share, and subscribe for more thrillers. Tell me in the comments, would you have jumped off that building?